The story opens with a young woman, worn and weary, trudging along a dusty, sun-bleached trail that winds toward a distant ranch. Her clothes are threadbare, patched in multiple places, and her shoes are scuffed and thin, offering little protection against the harsh terrain. Hunger gnaws at her stomach with a persistent aching rhythm, and the chill of the early morning wind seeps into her bones. She has been wandering for days, searching for work, food, or even a roof under which to rest her head. Each passing farm and homestead seems closed to her. The doors shut and the windows curtained against outsiders, and she feels the weight of isolation pressing down on her. She is alone in a world that seems to have forgotten her existence. As she approaches the outskirts of the town near the ranch, she notices the grandeur of the property. Sprawling pastures dotted with horses and cattle, sturdy wooden fences, and a large farmhouse that looks almost untouched by the hardships she has faced. But it is the promise of warmth and food that draws her closer, and a flicker of hope stirs within her chest. Her mind races with thoughts of survival. How long can she last on scraps? How many nights can she endure the biting cold before she collapses? Each step is heavy, yet driven by the instinct to live. The young woman has no family, no friends, and no safety net. Her life has been a series of disappointments and betrayals, forcing her to rely solely on her own resilience. Yet, despite the pride and independence that have carried her this far, desperation begins to cloud her judgment. She sees the rancher, a man of authority and wealth, moving about his property, overseeing workers with a calm but commanding presence. She knows that he possesses the very things she lacks: food, shelter, and security. For the first time, a dangerous thought crosses her mind. Perhaps she can trade something of herself for survival. Her emotions are a whirlwind. Shame battles against necessity, but hunger is louder than dignity. She tells herself that this is only temporary, a survival strategy until she can stand on her own again. The notion of a bargain, however unthinkable under ordinary circumstances, now seems like a lifeline. She imagines the warmth of a bed, the taste of a real meal, and a place where she wouldn't have to hide from the wind or the prying eyes of strangers. Her mind races with practicalities: how to approach the rancher, what to say, how to appear both vulnerable and trustworthy. As she steps closer to the farmhouse, she rehearses her words quietly, her throat tight with anxiety. Her heart pounds as she imagines the conversation that will change her life, yet she cannot bring herself to fully anticipate the consequences. Every instinct screams caution, yet survival instincts scream louder. In that moment, the young woman is caught between fear and necessity, pride and desperation, independence and the fragile hope that she might finally find refuge. When she finally meets the rancher, she does so with trembling hands and a voice that wavers, offering herself in exchange for food and shelter. There is an almost unbearable tension in the air, a silent acknowledgement of the gravity of her proposition. Yet, despite the precariousness of her choice, a faint spark of hope begins to flicker, the possibility of safety, the chance to heal, and the hope that the world might still hold some kindness for her after all. This moment marks the true beginning of her journey, one that will challenge her, transform her, and ultimately reveal the depth of human compassion in unexpected forms. The young woman steps cautiously onto the ranch, her worn boots crunching against the gravel driveway. The air here is different from the outskirts. She has been wandering thicker with the scent of livestock, freshly cut hay, and the faint, comforting aroma of wood smoke drifting from the farmhouse. Everything around her feels vast and imposing. Rolling fields stretch endlessly, dotted with grazing horses and cattle, and the wooden fences are tall and strong, marking boundaries that speak of both order and ownership. She feels small, almost invisible, in the midst of this grandeur, and a sense of awe mixes uneasily with her anxiety. Her hands clutch the hem of her dress, worn and patched but freshly cleaned in her mind as she anticipates her encounter with the rancher. Each step toward the main house feels heavier, weighed down by the reality of her decision. She is acutely aware that she has traded her pride for survival and that her life is now at the mercy of a man she barely knows. The ranch itself exudes authority, the large barn with its polished doors, the neatly arranged stacks of firewood, and the smoke curling from the chimney, all signs of careful management and wealth. The contrast with her own life is stark, and a wave of humility washes over her as she imagines herself fitting into this world. The front porch looms ahead, its wide steps worn smooth by years of use. She hesitates there, her mind racing. What will he say? Will he accept her bargain, or will he turn her away like so many others have? Her heart pounds as she lifts a trembling hand to knock. Before she can, the door swings open, revealing the rancher himself. He is a man of middle age, strong and grounded, with a face that carries both authority and the faintest softness in his eyes. His gaze is steady, measuring, yet not unkind. He studies her silently, as if assessing not just her words but her spirit, the resilience hidden beneath the layers of dirt, hunger, and fear. She swallows her pride and speaks, her voice shaky but clear. She explains her predicament, her hunger, her lack of shelter, her desperation. Each word feels like a confession, exposing her vulnerability and her fear of rejection. For a moment, silence hangs between them, filled only by the soft clatter of a distant horse and the rustling of leaves in the wind. The young woman braces herself for dismissal, her chest tight with anxiety. Instead, the rancher steps aside, gesturing toward the door with a subtle authority that reassures rather than intimidates. "Come inside," he says simply, his voice calm and even, without judgment. Relief surges through her, and she hesitates only a moment before following his lead. Inside, the warmth of the house wraps around her like a soft blanket, chasing away the chill that has followed her for days. The walls are adorned with simple but tasteful decorations, family portraits, hunting trophies, and shelves lined with books, creating a sense of lived-in comfort. A fire crackles in the hearth, sending gentle light dancing across the room. The rancher moves with an ease that comes from familiarity with this space, offering her a seat and a bowl of warm stew. The young woman's hands tremble as she accepts it, the heat and aroma filling more than just her stomach. They soothe her frayed nerves and hint at a life she had long thought impossible. She takes her first tentative bite, and the reality of the moment hits her. She is safe, at least for now, in a place that feels both imposing and protective. As she eats, she steals glances at the rancher. There is no mockery in his expression, no hint of exploitation, only quiet observation and patience. It is a kindness she had almost forgotten existed, a stark contrast to the harsh world she has known. In that moment, standing at the threshold of a life she never imagined, she begins to understand that this ranch, this man, may offer her more than mere survival. It might offer her a chance at dignity, security, and perhaps even trust. The morning sun streams through the windows of the ranch, casting golden light across the young woman's temporary sanctuary. As she stretches and takes in the new surroundings, a mix of wonder and apprehension fills her chest. The house is far larger and more orderly than any place she has ever known, a testament to careful hands and a disciplined household. Yet despite its size, there is an unspoken warmth in the rooms, a sense that life here is guided not merely by rules but by care. She notices the small details: a neatly folded quilt on a chair, a vase with freshly picked flowers, a row of clean dishes lined along the counter. Each element whispers stability and safety, things she has longed for but never had. Her eyes fall on the rancher as he moves about the room, tending to morning chores with quiet efficiency. He carries himself with a natural confidence, yet there is no harshness in his gestures, no impatience, no scorn. The way he checks on the animals, tends to the tools, and organizes the day reflects a man of integrity, someone who values responsibility and care in equal measure. The young woman feels herself studying him carefully, trying to read his intentions. Her first impression is cautious. After all, she has bargained with necessity, not choice. Yet she cannot deny that there is something disarming about his demeanor, a quiet strength that does not demand submission but invites trust. As she begins to help with small tasks, sweeping the floor, feeding the animals, and fetching water, she becomes acutely aware of the rhythm of ranch life. Each movement is deliberate, purposeful, yet there is a rhythm to it that is almost comforting. The rancher occasionally offers guidance, correcting her with patience rather than irritation, demonstrating his expectations without cruelty. For the first time in what feels like an eternity, she feels her mistakes are forgiven, her efforts acknowledged. A flicker of pride ignites within her, warming her from the inside out. He surprises her with small acts that seem simple but resonate deeply. A bowl of fresh fruit placed by her hand, a soft-spoken word of encouragement, a gentle nod when she completes a task well. These gestures communicate something she has rarely experienced: respect. It is not condescending or patronizing. It is genuine acknowledgement of her abilities and worth. She finds herself studying his eyes more than his words, searching for any hint of duplicity, any sign that she might be deceiving herself. But there is none. There is only steady observation, quiet kindness, and a calm authority that encourages her without threatening her. Amid her work, she begins to notice subtler details of the rancher's character. How he pauses to listen to the birds in the morning, how he pats a horse with careful hands, how he ensures that the workers are fed before he considers his own meal. These moments speak of empathy, of a man whose strength is tempered by compassion. The young woman cannot help but feel a budding respect, and along with it, a cautious hope. Perhaps not all men in this world are cruel, she thinks. Perhaps not all bargains come at the cost of one's dignity. Her mind drifts to what lies ahead. She knows she has entered into a precarious agreement, and yet the growing sense of security begins to quiet the constant edge of fear. The rancher does not rush her into trust, but neither does he withhold it unnecessarily. This balance, a careful, intentional demonstration of respect, begins to shift something within her. She feels herself relaxing, allowing for a small measure of comfort and safety she has never permitted herself before. By the end of the day, as she sits quietly by the fireplace, she realizes that first impressions can be misleading, but in this case, they are revealing. The rancher is not simply a man of means. He is a man of principle, capable of kindness without strings attached. This realization stirs both relief and curiosity within her. For the first time, she senses the possibility that her life at the ranch could be more than a temporary refuge. It could be the beginning of a transformation she had scarcely dared to imagine. The days at the ranch settle into a rhythm, a cadence that both challenges and comforts the young woman. Each morning begins with a low hum of activity, the soft neighing of horses, the distant calls of livestock, and the steady clatter of tools and buckets. At first, every task feels unfamiliar and overwhelming. Feeding the animals, mucking out stalls, and tending to the garden requires strength, endurance, and patience, all things she had seldom relied upon in her previous life of struggle and transient survival. Her muscles ache, her hands blister, and the early mornings test her resolve. Yet, with each passing day, she notices small victories, the animals responding to her gentle touch, the garden growing under her care, the satisfaction of completing chores without guidance. These small successes bolster her confidence and spark a quiet pride she had not felt in years. The rancher watches her attentively but without intrusion. He offers instruction where needed, demonstrating the correct techniques for milking cows or mending fences, yet he allows her room to learn and adapt. His approach is measured. He does not rush her, nor does he criticize harshly. There is an implicit trust in his manner, a belief that she is capable of more than she realizes. This trust, simple though it may seem, begins to chip away at the walls of fear and defensiveness she had constructed over a lifetime of hardship. For the first time, she experiences the subtle yet profound comfort of being regarded as competent, not merely vulnerable. Her adjustment is not solely physical but emotional. The young woman begins to anticipate the structure of the ranch day, finding reassurance in its predictability. Meals are no longer scavenged or uncertain, they are prepared, shared, and nourishing. She wakes each morning with purpose, the weight of aimlessness lifting slowly from her shoulders. Yet, alongside this relief is a lingering anxiety. She cannot forget the bargain that brought her here, the compromise of her own dignity, and the lingering fear that this safety might be temporary. But as she works, she notices the consistent kindness of the rancher, the way he pauses to ensure she is fed, the way he offers a word of encouragement, the way he acknowledges her efforts. These gestures, small but persistent, gradually transform her fear into trust. Interactions with other ranch workers further shape her adjustment. They are initially curious, some skeptical, others quietly respectful. She learns to navigate these social dynamics, understanding the hierarchy and unspoken rules of the ranch. Gradually, she earns their respect through diligence and sincerity. The camaraderie of shared labor lifting hay bales, mending fences, tending livestock creates bonds that anchor her to the community. She begins to feel a sense of belonging, an unfamiliar but deeply desired connection to a place and people who accept her presence. Her nights, once filled with worry and insomnia, now offer moments of reflection. She sits by the fire, her hands still calloused from the day's work, and considers the trajectory of her life. The ranch, once a symbol of unknown authority and potential danger, has become a place of safety and learning. The young woman notices subtle changes in herself, patience, resilience, and an emerging confidence that comes not from the absence of hardship, but from meeting it and overcoming it each day. Yet the adjustment is not complete. Beneath her growing competence lies an undercurrent of self-doubt, a fear that her presence is temporary, that the rancher's kindness might be conditional. She wrestles with these emotions privately, acknowledging them without letting them dominate her newfound sense of stability. This internal struggle marks an important stage in her journey, learning to balance gratitude with self-respect, dependency with independence, and survival with hope. By the end of this stage, the young woman has begun to transform. The ranch is no longer merely a refuge, it is a place where she can grow, learn, and discover aspects of herself she had long forgotten. Her labor is no longer a chore but a pathway to belonging. Her interactions are no longer tense but collaborative, and the rancher's quiet guidance has begun to mold her confidence. The adjustment is ongoing, but she begins to see that her new life holds the promise of stability, dignity, and perhaps, in time, something deeper, a connection built not on desperation, but on mutual respect and understanding. As days turn into weeks, the young woman begins to notice a pattern of subtle but meaningful gestures from the rancher. They are not grand declarations of affection or overt displays of wealth. They are small acts that convey respect, thoughtfulness, and genuine concern for her well-being. Each act, though seemingly ordinary, carries immense significance, particularly for someone who has spent much of her life in neglect and hardship. The cumulative effect of these gestures slowly begins to reshape her perception of the man who had once been a figure of authority and, in her eyes, potential threat. It starts with the little things. A warm mug of cocoa waiting for her on a chilly morning, the careful placement of her work gloves so she can find them easily, or a clean towel left in her room without prompting. To anyone else, these might seem mundane, but to her, they are profound signals that someone sees her, considers her comfort, and values her existence. Each act chips away at the lingering fear and self-doubt that has defined her life, replacing it with a cautious sense of safety. The rancher also takes the time to teach her, not just the mechanics of ranch work, but practical skills that enhance her confidence and independence. He shows her how to mend a fence correctly, how to recognize the health of livestock, and even how to manage small problems on her own. In his patient instruction, she recognizes a deep-seated respect for her intelligence and capability. Unlike many people she has encountered, he does not talk down to her or assume she is incapable. He simply guides her, allowing her to learn through experience. Each lesson is a small testament to his faith in her. Beyond physical tasks, his kindness extends to emotional support. There are quiet moments when he listens to her recount stories of her past, never interrupting, never dismissing. He acknowledges her hardships with a subtle empathy that surprises her, a gentle recognition that her life has not been easy. She finds herself opening up gradually, telling him things she has kept secret for years, trusting that he will not judge or exploit her vulnerability. These interactions are transformative. They teach her that kindness does not require payment, and that care can be given freely without hidden motives. There are also gestures that reveal his attention to her comfort in more personal ways. A corner of the ranch is cleared and furnished for her, a small table by the window where she can read or write, flowers placed near her bed, blankets adjusted to ensure warmth at night. Each thoughtful detail communicates that she is not merely tolerated but genuinely valued. This realization slowly erodes the residual shame from the bargain she made to survive, helping her see that her worth is intrinsic, not transactional. The young woman begins to notice how these small acts affect her own behavior. She works harder, not out of obligation, but out of a desire to contribute meaningfully to a household that has shown her such respect. She smiles more easily, laughs softly at the rancher's quiet humor, and feels a growing sense of belonging she had long thought impossible. The ranch, once a place she entered out of desperation, is transforming into a home safe, structured, and nurturing. Yet, beneath these positive experiences, a quiet tension lingers. She still struggles with internalized guilt and lingering fears that her presence may not be welcome indefinitely, or that the kindness she receives is temporary. But the consistency of the rancher's care begins to override these doubts. Each day, she internalizes the lesson that trust and respect can be nurtured over time, and that relationships can be built on mutual dignity rather than fear or obligation. By the end of this period, the young woman experiences a subtle but profound shift. She is no longer just surviving. She is beginning to thrive. The small acts of care, repeated daily, have a cumulative effect. They foster trust, build confidence, and cultivate a sense of belonging. She realizes that she is not simply a guest at the ranch, but an individual whose presence is meaningful and whose life is valued. In this slow, deliberate unfolding of kindness, the foundations for a deeper, more enduring connection are being laid, one that may eventually blossom into love, trust, and mutual respect. Despite the growing comfort and stability at the ranch, The young woman finds herself grappling with a storm of internal conflict. The kindness and consideration shown by the rancher have begun to break through her long-held fears, yet her past experiences weigh heavily on her conscience. She cannot forget the desperate bargain she made upon arriving at the ranch, the choice to offer herself in exchange for food and shelter. Though the rancher has shown nothing but respect, she feels a lingering sense of shame and guilt, believing that she somehow owes him more than what he asks. This emotional tension becomes the center of her inner struggle, pulling her between gratitude and unease. Her mind often drifts back to the streets and fields she once wandered, where survival was a daily battle and human compassion was scarce. She recalls the nights of hunger, the cold that bit through her thin clothing, and the strangers who ignored her plight. These memories are sharp reminders of why she made the choices she did, yet they also reinforce her sense of inadequacy. Did I make the right decision? She asks herself repeatedly. Am I betraying myself by accepting this safety? Each question gnaws at her, challenging her sense of self-worth and forcing her to confront uncomfortable truths about vulnerability and dependence. At the same time, she observes the rancher's consistent behavior, his patient instruction, his quiet attentiveness, and his gestures of care, and wonders whether her assumptions about life, people, and trust have been too harsh. She begins to recognize a paradox. Though she has always equated survival with self-reliance, she now sees that accepting help does not necessarily diminish one's dignity. Yet the lesson is not easy to internalize. She struggles to reconcile the vulnerability she must embrace to thrive at the ranch with her instinct to remain guarded, independent, and cautious. The young woman also experiences a subtle emotional awakening. She notices herself looking forward to the rancher's presence, his quiet words, and the small moments of connection they share. This awareness brings both comfort and confusion. How can she allow herself to feel attachment without feeling indebted or constrained? How can she trust someone fully when her life has been shaped by betrayal and hardship? These questions loop endlessly in her mind, creating an undercurrent of anxiety even amid safety and routine. Her internal conflict is further complicated by pride. She has survived by her wits and resilience for so long that relying on another person, even one as kind as the rancher, feels unnatural. Accepting his gestures of care and his trust challenges her deeply ingrained belief that she must stand alone. At times, she catches herself pulling back, retreating into silence, or keeping her thoughts private, fearing that showing too much gratitude or affection could make her vulnerable again. This tension between wanting connection and fearing dependence becomes a defining emotional thread in her daily life. Yet, amidst the turmoil, glimmers of clarity emerge. She realizes that the rancher's kindness is consistent, not fleeting, and that his intentions are rooted in respect, not obligation. Slowly, she begins to differentiate between the choice she made out of desperation and the genuine affection and regard he shows her. This insight allows her to start seeing her own actions in a new light, not as a debt to be repaid, but as participation in a mutually respectful relationship. By the end of this period, her internal conflict has not fully resolved, but it has shifted from paralyzing fear to thoughtful reflection. She begins to embrace the complexity of trust and vulnerability, recognizing that survival and dignity can coexist, and that human kindness can be a source of strength rather than shame. The emotional tension, once heavy and suffocating, becomes a delicate balancing act, one that will guide her towards self-understanding. One evening, as the sun dips low over the sprawling ranch, painting the sky in warm hues of gold and amber, the young woman finds herself alone in the main room of the farmhouse, quietly finishing her chores. The day has been long, filled with the usual rhythm of feeding animals, mending fences, and tending to the garden. Yet there is a sense of calm in the air, a pause between the work and the evening meal. The rancher enters quietly, carrying something small in his hand, and for a moment her heart skips a beat. She cannot yet predict the significance of the gesture, but she senses that it is different from the subtle acts of care she has come to expect. He approaches with his usual calm demeanor, yet there is a softness in his expression, a gentle gravity that immediately commands attention. In his hand rests a small, delicately crafted ring, its simple elegance catching the flickering light from the fireplace. He sets it before her, not with demand, but as a gift, and speaks with a measured sincerity. "You don't owe me anything," he says quietly. "This is for you, for your life here, for the trust and courage you've shown. I want you to have it not because of what you gave me, but because of who you are." The young woman's hands tremble as she reaches for the ring, her mind racing with disbelief and a flood of emotions she is unaccustomed to experiencing. Shock, confusion, and tentative hope mingle together, threatening to overwhelm her. She had come to the ranch with a heart hardened by hunger and necessity, prepared only to barter survival, never to receive something so symbolic, so intimate, and so generous. The gesture breaks through the last walls of fear and self-doubt that lingered, revealing that her worth is recognized not as a means to an end, but as an intrinsic part of her being. Tears threaten to spill as she lifts her eyes to the rancher, searching for any hint of jest or pretense, but finds only earnestness. There is no hidden agenda, no expectation attached, only acknowledgement and a desire to honor her presence and her courage. This moment becomes a revelation, the realization that genuine kindness and respect can exist without strings attached, that one's value is not measured by what they can give in exchange for survival, but by the person they are and the effort they bring to life itself. As she slides the ring onto her finger, a wave of warmth and belonging washes over her. The gesture transforms the dynamic between them, shifting from one of temporary arrangement to something deeper and more meaningful. It is a recognition of her resilience, her dignity, and the bond that has quietly grown between them over the weeks of shared labor, learning, and small acts of care. In this simple, elegant ring lies a promise of trust, protection, and perhaps the first glimmer of love that is freely offered rather than coerced. The rancher watches her silently, allowing her the space to process the magnitude of the moment. Words are unnecessary. The gesture itself speaks volumes. The young woman feels an unfamiliar mixture of humility and pride, realizing that she is no longer defined solely by past hardships or desperate choices. She is seen, acknowledged, and valued in a way that transcends any transaction she had imagined. This unexpected offer is more than a gift. It is a turning point. The ring represents not only the rancher's respect, but also a doorway to a new chapter of life, one where safety, dignity, and personal worth are honored. The young woman recognizes that her journey at the ranch has moved beyond mere survival. She is beginning to inhabit a space where her identity, her courage, and her potential are celebrated rather than merely tolerated. In that quiet, transformative moment, she understands that life has a capacity for unexpected generosity and grace. The ring is a symbol of trust, a tangible acknowledgement of her worth, and a bridge toward a future she had never dared to hope for. It is a turning point not only in their relationship, but in her own understanding of herself, her possibilities, and the extraordinary power of simple, sincere human kindness. After the unexpected gift of the wedding ring, the rancher leads the young woman to a small section of the ranch house that has been transformed for her, a private room, modest yet inviting, filled with warmth and light. The walls are painted in soft, earthy tones, creating a sense of calm and comfort that immediately contrasts with the harshness and instability she has known in her past. The floor is covered with a simple woven rug, and a sturdy wooden bed is made up with fresh linens and a neatly folded quilt. A small window lets in the afternoon sun, and the gentle rustle of trees outside provides a soothing backdrop to this new space, a place that is wholly hers. As she steps inside, the young woman feels a mixture of awe and disbelief. For so long, she has lived without privacy or security, often sleeping in barns, fields, or wherever she could find shelter. The concept of having a room all her own, a place where she can retreat, rest, and reflect, is almost foreign to her. Yet, in this carefully prepared space, she senses an unspoken message from the rancher. She is valued. She belongs, and her well-being matters. The room is not just a physical space, but a symbol of trust, safety, and the recognition of her dignity. She runs her fingers across the polished wooden surfaces, noticing the attention to detail. A small table with a vase of freshly picked flowers, a stack of books that suggest thoughtfulness, and care, and a chair positioned to catch the morning light. Every element reflects someone thinking about her comfort and needs. This realization strikes her deeply. These are not random acts, but deliberate choices made to honor her presence and give her a sense of independence within the ranch. Sitting on the edge of the bed, the young woman allows herself a rare moment of reflection. Memories of hardship and neglect surface, nights of hunger, cold, and fear, but they now contrast sharply with the security of this room. For the first time in a long while, she can breathe fully without the constant tension that has defined her life. She begins to understand that her journey is no longer just about survival. It is about reclaiming her life, her identity, and her sense of self-worth. The rancher, standing quietly outside the doorway, does not intrude. His respect for her privacy is evident, reinforcing the lessons she has been learning through his consistent kindness. Trust is mutual, and care does not require surrendering one's autonomy. He allows her to explore the room, to make it feel like her own, and in doing so, empowers her to take ownership of a part of her life that has previously been dictated by circumstance and need. Over the next days, the room becomes a sanctuary. She begins to arrange her belongings, stacking clothes neatly in a dresser, placing personal items on the small table, and making the space her own. The act of organizing and personalizing the room gives her a sense of agency and pride. It is a daily reminder that she is no longer merely a visitor or someone surviving by necessity. She is a valued member of the household, deserving of comfort, respect, and care. The room also becomes a space for emotional growth. Here, she can process her feelings, write in a journal, or simply sit quietly and watch the sunlight move across the walls. It is in this space that she begins to imagine a future beyond mere survival, where trust, love, and belonging are possible. The physical security of the room mirrors the emotional security she is slowly beginning to feel with the rancher, laying the foundation for deeper connection and mutual respect. By providing her with a room of her own, the rancher has done more than furnish a space. He has offered her dignity, autonomy, and a tangible sense of stability. For the young woman, this room is a turning point and emblem of her evolving life, her growing confidence, and the beginning of a new chapter defined not by desperation, but by hope, trust, and the possibility of love. With the security of her own room and the consistent kindness of the rancher, the young woman begins to experience a subtle yet profound shift in their relationship. What started as a tenuous arrangement born of desperation has grown into a bond rooted in trust, respect, and shared experiences. Their interactions are no longer defined solely by need or obligation. Instead, they are characterized by mutual understanding, gentle humor, and quiet companionship. The young woman begins to see the rancher not just as a provider or protector, but as a person with his own strengths, vulnerabilities, and capacity for care. The routine of ranch life provides a backdrop for these growing connections. Mornings spent tending animals, afternoons filled with chores, and evenings by the fire become opportunities for shared conversation. They talk of practical matters, at first the care of livestock, the repair of fences, the organization of the ranch, but gradually the discussions deepen. He asks about her past, her dreams, her thoughts on life, and listens with genuine interest. Unlike the harshness of the world she once knew, his attention is patient and non-judgmental, allowing her to speak freely without fear of ridicule. This respect fosters a sense of equality, transforming their dynamic from one of dependency into a more balanced, heartfelt partnership. Small gestures continue to play a significant role in their growing closeness. A shared meal, a hand extended to steady a falling bucket, or a quiet smile across the barnyard all communicate unspoken understanding and care. The rancher notices the details, the way she tilts her head when she's concentrating, the subtle sigh when she completes a difficult task, the spark of pride in her eyes when she masters a skill. In turn, she observes him with newfound attentiveness, noting his consistency, integrity, and the calm assurance he brings to the ranch. These observations build admiration and trust, forming the subtle yet essential foundation for emotional intimacy. Amid these moments, the young woman begins to reflect on her own feelings. She realizes that the fear and shame that once defined her interactions with others are slowly being replaced by affection, respect, and a tentative sense of love. This shift is neither abrupt nor forced. It develops organically, nurtured by the rancher's patience and her own growing confidence. She recognizes that she can care for someone without losing herself, and that true connection is built on understanding and respect rather than desperation or obligation. Their relationship deepens further through shared experiences that reveal character and values. On long days in the fields, he demonstrates humility and consideration for every living creature on the ranch, teaching her not just practical skills but lessons in empathy, patience, and responsibility. She begins to emulate these qualities in her own work, gaining a sense of pride not only in her accomplishments but also in the moral and emotional growth she experiences. Together, they navigate challenges, whether tending to a sick animal, repairing a broken fence, or managing the unpredictability of ranch life with a quiet, cooperative rhythm that strengthens their bond. The young woman also notices her own emotional evolution. Where she once hesitated to trust, she now feels a growing comfort in the rancher's presence. Laughter becomes easier, silence is more companionable, and shared glances carry meaning that neither needs to speak aloud. She begins to imagine a future where the rancher is not just a guardian, but a partner, a person with whom she can share her hopes, her fears, and her daily life. This realization fills her with a mix of excitement, trepidation, and gratitude, reflecting the complexity of emerging love grounded in mutual respect. By the end of this stage, their relationship has blossomed into a deep, tender bond. It is a connection that transcends the circumstances of their first meeting, grounded instead in trust, shared experiences, and the quiet recognition of each other's worth. The young woman feels secure, valued, and hopeful, recognizing that love can grow naturally, unhurried and unforced, in the soil of respect, kindness, and mutual understanding. This blossoming relationship is not merely a romantic development. It is the culmination of her journey from desperation to belonging, from survival to the possibility of joy and partnership. The morning light spills gently across the ranch, illuminating fields that stretch toward the horizon, warm and alive with possibility. The young woman rises early, as she has grown accustomed to over the past weeks, but today feels different. There is a sense of quiet anticipation in the air, a gentle shift in her awareness that mirrors the transformation within her. No longer consumed solely by the need to survive, she now moves with purpose, confidence, and a subtle, profound sense of belonging. The life she once imagined as unattainable has begun to take shape before her eyes. Her first stop is the small, cozy room that the rancher built for her, a sanctuary that has become a symbol of her dignity, autonomy, and the respect she has earned. As she smooths the quilt on her bed and arranges the few personal items she has, she reflects on the journey that brought her here. She remembers the despair that once shadowed every step, the cold nights of hunger and fear. and the moment she made a desperate bargain to secure her survival. But she also recalls the kindness, patience, and consistent care that transform those moments of desperation into opportunities for growth, trust, and hope. Each memory carries weight not as a burden, but as evidence of how far she has come. She steps outside, the soft morning breeze carrying the scent of hay and earth, and surveys the ranch. The animals graze peacefully, workers move about their duties with quiet efficiency, and the rancher himself tends to the morning chores with a steady, calm presence. Watching him, she feels a surge of gratitude and respect, recognizing the balance of strength and gentleness he embodies. In this man, she has found a partner not defined by possession or expectation, but by integrity, empathy, and unwavering support. Their bond, forged through shared labor, trust, and small acts of care, has grown into something deep and enduring. The young woman feels a newfound clarity in her role at the ranch. She is no longer simply a guest or a survivor clinging to safety. She is a valued member of this household, contributing meaningfully to the rhythm and life of the ranch. Her work is met with appreciation, her presence brings warmth, and her voice is heard. This sense of purpose strengthens her, instills pride, and nurtures the confidence she once believed lost. With each task, she feels the empowerment of autonomy, the satisfaction of competence, and the gentle affirmation that she is both capable and cherished. As the day progresses, the rancher joins her in the fields. Their conversation is easy, filled with shared laughter and the quiet understanding that has developed over time. There is a comfort in this companionship, a recognition that life need not be solitary to be meaningful. She realizes that she has begun to trust fully, not blindly, but wisely, acknowledging the man's consistent kindness and integrity while embracing her own capacity to care and reciprocate. This mutual trust forms the foundation for a life that is no longer governed by fear or desperation, but by partnership, respect, and hope. By the afternoon, the young woman pauses atop a gentle rise overlooking the ranch. The sun bathes the landscape in warm, golden light, and for the first time in her life, she allows herself to feel truly at peace. The journey from despair to hope, from vulnerability to dignity, has been arduous, but it has also revealed the depth of human resilience and the transformative power of kindness. She realizes that her life